14 of the fantasy football season, and here starts sit at the tight end position for every matchup this week. The first one, Las Vegas Raiders at the LA Rams here on Thursday Night Football. So Foster Monroe, I know he's been up and down since he's been filling in for Darren Waller for the last several weeks here, but I think in this ball game he could have a good ball game. This Ram defense, middle of the pack still, even though they got nothing going on offense for this Los Angeles Ram team. So Monroe, I know last week he only had one catch for 32 yards, but this week here I think he could do a little bit more, anywhere from 40, 50 yards, and possibly find the end zone. And this week here I have him as a start. Now to Tyler Higbee, he was a tight end I mentioned early in the week as a guy to drop here for this Los Angeles Ram team. He's just not getting anything going. The quarterback situation and offensive line situation's been a big mess here for this Los Angeles Ram team. And Tyler Higbee, I know he's a good ball player, but the last 3-4 games, he really hasn't done anything, and how could you trust him when you're probably going to have Bryce Perkins or Wolford at quarterback, with possibly an outside shot of Baker Mayfield starting this week. Now to the Houston Texans at the Dallas Cowboys. Jordan Akins last week, he didn't do much, but the last 2 out of 4 weeks, he's had double-digit fantasy points in PPR leagues. But this week here, I don't think he's going to do much versus the Dallas Cowboys. This is a lethal defense that gets to the quarterback and causes turnovers. And right here, I think it's going to be very tough for this Houston Texan team to move the football. And I got Akins as a start. Now to the other side of things, Dalton Schultz, I got him as a start. Him and Dak Prescott have a great rapport, no doubt about it. And Schultz, he's been a top 5 to top 8 tight end weekly since Dak Prescott's returned into the lineup over a month ago. So right here this week versus a weak Houston Texan defense, and a game where I think the Cowboys could put up a decent amount of points once again, I have Schultz as a start this week. Now to the Ravens at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mark Andrews, there's not much to say about him, obviously, even though I know Tyler Huntley starting this ball game. But believe it or not, I like what I saw from Huntley last season, and he drove the Ravens down in the last drive of that ball game last week to beat the Denver Broncos. So Mark Andrews still could put up top 2, top 3 numbers at the position this week here, and he's always had a good career versus the Steelers, so he's a definite start this week. And now Pat Freiermuth, I have him as a start as well. He's one of the main targets here for Kenny Pickett in this Pittsburgh Steelers offense. Even I know a lot of guys have been inconsistent for this Steelers team. Obviously, George Pickens and Deontay Johnson, it's pretty much been one good game, one bad game for those guys. But Freiermuth, for the most part, has been consistent. And this week here, I have him as a start. Now to the Minnesota Vikings at the Detroit Lions. So TJ Hawkinson, he's a start each and every week. And right here this week versus former team, obviously, you're going to want to go out there and put him in your fantasy lineup. Here's TJ Hawkinson. Weekly, he's a top 4, top 5 tight end at worst. And this week, I think this could be a mini shootout. And I wouldn't be surprised if Hawkinson gets 70, 80 yards and finds the end zone. Now to his replacement over there in Detroit, Brock Wright. I have him as a sit this week here. I know we've seen a few decent ball games out of Brock Wright, but I'm not going to say he's going to go out there and play good in this one. I know he had a couple touchdowns here and there, but he's not really getting yards. He's not playing a lot of snaps. And this week here, I don't think he's going to do much, so I'm going to sit Brock Wright in this one. Now to the Jaguars at the Tennessee Titans. Evan Ingram, I have him as a sit this week. I know last week he found the end zone, but this Jaguar team, besides Christian Kirk and Travis Etienne, consistent these players are and hard to map out, especially here in a crucial Week 14 ball game for a lot of fantasy owners. So this week here, I don't want to deal with most Jacksonville Jaguars in a tough division matchup versus the Tennessee Titans. Even though I know last week this Titan team got destroyed, but that was the Philadelphia Eagles, who are obviously a well-oiled machine and the best team in pro football. So Ingram's a sit for me. Austin Hooper is a sit for me as well this week. We know he's had a couple pop games here and there this season, but he's a guy that's been in too consistent. I know this tight end position is one of the worst positions it's been in a while in fantasy football, but this week here, no way I'm going to start Austin Hooper. He's a sit. Now to the Philadelphia Eagles at the New York Giants. Jack Stoles, he's filled in for Dallas Goedert, and obviously he's pretty much not been a guy that's done anything for fantasy owners. Obviously you're going to sit him. Dallas Goedert, he possibly could be back in Week 15, reports are saying, but this week Stoles, I don't see him doing anything, and even if he does, the last 3-4 weeks he's done nothing. Now Daniel Bellinger, he's an interesting case, no doubt about it, for this New York Giant team is Daniel Bellinger, but he's another guy that he could be hit or miss as well. I know they need guys in the red zone. I know Daniel Jones liked him early in the season before he had the eye socket injury But this week here, you got to see a little bit more out of him. After last week, he had 5 catches, 24 yards. So this week, I got him as a sit. Now, New York Jets of the Buffalo Bills. Tyler Conklin, it seems like one good week, one bad week here for Tyler Conklin, and I just can't trust it. Tough matchup versus the Buffalo Bills. And going back to the Week 9 matchup, Conklin only had 4 fantasy points in that one. So this week here, he's a sit for me. This Jet offense just inconsistent, even though Mike White definitely brings more consistency to it than a Zach Wilson. But this week, I'm still sitting him. And Dawson Knox, same thing. It's been a down year for Knox after last season having 9 touchdowns and a breakout season. And it's just weird how this Buffalo Bill offense operates for fantasy football. Gabe Davis pretty much hasn't done much this year. Isaiah McKenzie, he's been hit or miss at that. Obviously, Diggs, he's the alpha receiver and the top guy, but besides that, Dawson Knox and Davis haven't done much, and I can't trust Knox in this one in a pretty tough matchup, obviously, versus the New York Jets, where in Week 9, he didn't do much in that one, so he's a sit for me. Now to the Browns at the Cincinnati Bengals. So right here, David Njoku, I thought he was going to play last week after having a good game versus Tampa Bay a few weeks ago, but he didn't play in that ball game. But if Njoku's back, he's definitely a start. He's a good tight end. He's athletic, no doubt about it, and he's having one of the best seasons, if not the best season, of his NFL career. So he's definitely a start here for me. And Hayden Hurst, it doesn't look like he's going to play in this ball game. Doubtful as of now. Early reports this week here for this Cincinnati Bengal team. So Mitchell Wilcox is going to fill in for the Cincinnati Bengal team, and I don't think he's going to do much. Obviously, he's an unknown, is Mitchell Wilcox. We know we've seen him in there as the second tight end, but he's more of a blocking option than a receiving tight end. And the other thing here, Jamar Chase is back. Targets are going to go to him. Target's going to go to T. Higgins. Target's going to go to Tyler Boyd. And whoever's going to start at running back this week as well, even though I could see P. Ryan still playing, even if Mixon's back getting a decent role. But anyway, Mitchell Wilcox, he'll be the third or fourth option in this offense, and he's definitely a guy I'm not going to rely on this week. Now to the Chiefs at the Denver Broncos. Travis Kelce, what could you say? He's a top tight end each and every week. You pencil him in for 20-plus fantasy points. And this week here versus a mediocre Bronco defense, I'll give him credit where credit's due. The last few weeks, they've been playing good football here. Travis Kelce still going to have a good ball game, but it might not be as easy as you thought. But he's getting the start, no doubt, this week. And now to Greg Dulcich. Last week had a nice bounce-back game, but 3 good games it was, 3 bad games. And then he came back last week with a good ball game, but I still can't trust him in a big situation. And then each and every week, the landscape at the tight end position changes. But this Denver Bronco offense has been a train wreck all season. Russell Wilson, he looks finished, unfortunately. I know Cortland Sutton might not play in this game. Some more targets here for Greg Dulcich. But he's a guy, obviously, that I'm still going to sit and can't count on. Now to the Bucs at the 49ers. So Cade Otton, I have him as a sit this week here. I know he found the end zone late in that ball game to get the Bucs back in it on Monday Night Football versus the New Orleans Saints in Week 13. But right here, I'm going to have him as a sit. It's Cade Otton. He's a guy, obviously, I don't think week in and week out you could count on him as an option. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, they're the top targets. Rachaad White out of the backfield, he's good for 4 or 5 balls per game here. And even Fournette, he's going to catch a couple. So right now, Cade Otton, it was good to see him score a touchdown and get back on the board. But this week here, I have him as a sit. And same for Cameron Brate. He just hasn't done much. And at this point of his career, he's more of a blocking tight end and a guy who'll run some routes but not really do anything. So he's a sit. And George Kittle, I'll give him the nod in this one. I know Brock Purdy's going to start this ball game, obviously, for the San Francisco 49ers. But right here, George Kittle, I think he could be a tight end in this one that he could rely on as a security blanket. And this is still a dynamic offense where Purdy maybe could be an obviously consistent quarterback and a guy who could get the job done until Jimmy Garoppolo could possibly return in the playoffs. So George Kittle this week here, I give him the start, even though the last few weeks we haven't seen much. Now the Panthers at the Seahawks, Tommy Tremble, I'm giving him a sit. He hasn't done anything this season here. I know he's had a couple games with a touchdown here and there, but besides that, this Panther offense has pretty much been a train wreck for the majority of the season. And Tremble's a sit. And now to the Seattle side of things, Noah Fant last week, great ball game, no doubt about it, but I got to see it at least one more time before I'm confident putting them in my starting lineup, because these guys disappear a lot for this team. Besides DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, it's pretty much that's all that's going on in this offense. But Fant, the last few weeks, he's definitely building up, learning the playbook maybe a little bit more, or just earning the trust a little bit more here of Geno Smith. But this week here, I'm going to sit Noah Fant. And Will Disley, he had an early pop early in the season, finding the end zone 3 out of 4 ball games. But this week here, I'm going to sit him. The last 4 or 5 weeks, we've seen nothing from Disley, and he's an easy sit. Now to the Miami Dolphins. At the Los Angeles Chargers, Mike Gesicki, he was a great tight end last season for the majority of the year, but this year he's been phased out for the most part. He's only catching 1 or 2 balls per game, it seems like, lately here. And Drew Smite's been more of a red zone target for this Miami team, so Gesicki's a sit. Gerald Everett, solid season in his first year with the Los Angeles Chargers. Last week, a solid ball game, 5 catches for 80 yards for Gerald Everett. And this week here, I think he could find some holes in that Miami linebacker position in the middle of the field. And he's a tight end that's athletic. I've said it time and time again if you've been following the channel this season. He's a good tight end and a guy who possibly could even play wide receiver if you needed him. So he's a start this week. And now to the final game of the week, Monday Night Football, New England Patriots at the Arizona Cardinals. Hunter Henry has had a couple decent games here and there this season, but he's not a guy, obviously, I could trust in fantasy football circles. So this week here, I'm going to sit him. Even though on paper it's a good matchup, no doubt about it, I just don't think he's going to come through in this one. And a guy you could trust, so he's a sit. And Trey McBride, he was one of the best tight ends in college football over the last few seasons. But so far in the 2 starts he's gotten since Zach Ertz went out for the season with his knee injury here, he hasn't done anything, and he's easily a guy I would sit this week. So that's week 14 tight end start sits of every matchup of the fantasy football season.